The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. Gobble, gobble, viewers and listeners. As you listen to this, you are either preparing yourself for the Thanksgiving dinner, or maybe you are a couple days removed from the Thanksgiving festivities, depending on when you're catching this program and what format you're catching it, either as radio or podcast or live stream. But either way, you are enjoying this show at hopefully a Thanksgiving adjacent time period. And so I would wish to you and yours happy Thanksgiving. I'm particularly excited for the holiday. As we record this, Thanksgiving is tomorrow for us in the Break the Business cinematic universe. And I am just overjoyed at the notion to dig into all the great foods that come with us on Turkey Day. But even as I say that, I gotta say, I feel like calling it Turkey Day as a nickname is not very fair, because if I'm listing out the foods that I love on Thanksgiving, turkey's kind of low on the list. Let me bring in our co-host, Elisa Rockdock, to weigh in on this. Elisa, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Ryan?
It is a pleasure to have you here. I should mention, joining us later in the show, I'm so excited for this guest. Washington Post columnist and author Taylor Lorenz is going to be joining us. To say that I have been trying to get this interview my whole podcasting life
I
is
don't know how you
almost
did
an
it.
understatement. I don't quite know either, because she's got a book out. So like she's got to talk to people, and that's great. I mean, she's sort of been a co-host of this show in as much as we've often talked about her stories on this program.
Absolutely.
But I'm a fan of hers. I know you're a fan of hers. And so I imagine we're both champing at the bit to get to talk to her about her new book, Extremely Online, The Untold Story of Fame, Influence, and Power on the Internet. We both dug through the copies we got because we were so excited to read it. And now we get to ask her all about it. How giddy are you?
I'm so stoked because if there is anything I love, it is dissertation grade writing about online communities.
I can't tell you how happy I am to have you here. I'll give the viewers and listeners a backstory here.
Oh.
When we booked the Taylor Lorenz interview and she sent the book over for us to read, much love to her, the folks at Simon & Schuster for getting that over to us. As I'm reading this, the first thought I had was, I am so out of my element, because Taylor Lorenz writes about the history of the last couple decades of social media and digital media with just a reporter's doggedness and a PhD's thoughtfulness. And I'm like, I can't do this myself. I'm bringing a knife to a gunfight. Thankfully, I have a doctor on call, a literal doctor of pop culture on call, who, like, I know understands this language and can speak to this stuff, literally has made it her research interest. And so thank God I have somebody like you here who can help me handle this interview so that I am not completely underpowered for the whole time. Thank you for doing this, by the way.
And thank you, and thank you to the 9 years at Florida International University for giving me the strength and the gravitas with which to take this task on.
If I were to, because in addition to being a PhD in pop culture, that's not a joke, people. Like, that's not an honorary title that the internet has given her.
Technically, the paper says comparative sociology. Pero what I studied was video games.
Yeah. And also, like, if we're given the whole CV here, you also have a separate master's degree. Not one of those like, oh, I got a master's degree because I went halfway through to my PhD. No, like a completely separate master's degree. You got one of those too. But you have a master's degree in like gender and rock music, right? So like even more pop culture onto your curriculum vitae.
Interdisciplinary studies. If it's not interdisciplinary, I don't want it. Okay.
So
It's not STEM, it's STEAM.
So in addition to having the academic background that makes you excited about this interview, you're also just a denizen of the internet, an extremely online person. And
Yep.
if I were to like list for you the internet figures that were most formative to you in your internet journey, I imagine Taylor Lorenz is on that list.
Absolutely. In terms of folks that are writing about the internet, in a way that at least I in the gaming sphere, and I'll gush about this to her later, so forgive the repetition, but the idea that she is bringing what is sorely missing to the conversation about virtual worlds, it's institutional knowledge. We take so many things for granted in terms of brand deals and even just the term influencer and content creator. And we take those as given now, but those things have a history and those things have firsts. And those things have histories long before what even you might have thought of as the first brand deal, or the first content creator, essentially. The book is comprehensive. It is something that I wish I had when I was writing my PhD. So I can't wait. And I am also extremely online, as the book says, to the point where I almost felt like, ooh, should I feel like good that I recognize a lot of these things or embarrassed?
Oh my gosh.
That's going to be fun.
That is going to be fun. But before we get into all of that, let me bring you in on the conversation I was having with the viewers and listeners right before we brought you in, which is about Thanksgiving turkey. As we said before, we are Thanksgiving adjacent as we do this podcast. People will either be about to sit down to Thanksgiving dinner when they hear or see this, or have just concluded their Thanksgiving festivities. And I was just saying that we call Thanksgiving Turkey Day. That's its. But honestly, when it comes to Thanksgiving food, it's not the food I'm most excited about, but it gets the leadership credit. I almost consider, first of all, all this is meant to say, I love the sides of Thanksgiving a lot more.
It's
to me, it is sides-giving.
It's sides-giving.
But turkey gets too much credit. As far as I'm concerned, if Thanksgiving dinner was an NFL team, okay?
Oh.
They are like the entire Thanksgiving meal is like the 2019 San Francisco 49ers, and the turkey is Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. Like, decent, but ultimately significantly raised by the skill position talent around him. And being ultimately carried.
Christian McCaffrey of sides.
Yes. Your Christian McCaffrey stuffing, your Deebo Samuel green bean casserole. And somewhere in that lineup is
mac and cheese.
yeah, and somewhere in that lineup is the amazing apple pie that producer Lauren makes every year for our family. Actually, let me just bring her in real quick. Producer Lauren, is there a pie on the menu for tomorrow's Thanksgiving?
If you want a pie, there will be a pie, because
of course
I
want
prepared.
A damn pie.
I was prepared to make pies because I'm like the pie person. Like every year I make like 50 pies and they're all sitting there and they go out everywhere. And this year on both family events, one of them did not assign me pies, but rather other objects. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess that's what I'm doing this year. And then like the big family one has like 7 different people signed up to bring pies. And I was like, I kind of feel excessive right now.
Ooh.
So it might just be like
excessive.
for me at my house, and I'm going to make a whole bunch of like little mini bite-sized pumpkin pies, because I feel like the crust to pie ratio is going to be better for getting rid of all the materials that will expire in my pie crust making mission. So I will be making pies, and I didn't know where they were going because I was getting out pied in the family. So it'll just be you and me, Ryan. We're going to eat a lot of pie. That
being said, don't overexert yourself. Don't let me patriarchy you into pie baking if you are not feeling up to it. We're just happy, of course, to be hanging out with you on Thanksgiving.
As I kvetch about that, though, like my father said, we're not making a turkey this year because there's other people who've signed up to bring turkeys, so we don't need to do that. And he didn't want to fry it. He's fried a turkey for the last few years. And then at the last minute, 2 days ago, he goes, I found a great deal on turkey. So I got a turkey and a ham. And I was like, oh, are you going to fry it? He goes, no, you can just put it in the oven. And I was like, oh, can I? Thanks. So I will also be making a turkey and a ham and the stuffing and the green bean casserole and all that. So yeah, there's going to be some scheduling issues.
I am wondering where you're going to find the hours. Because viewers and listeners, as we record this, it is 9:15 p.m. Eastern, the night before Thanksgiving.
Not the first time.
Oh my God.
I'm already white knuckling on your behalf.
I live for this stuff.
All right. So, Elisa, I got a couple things that right, we do have a bit of an agenda before we bring Taylor Lorenz in here. I do want to get a career update from you. I believe we have a clip that we want to show, so we got to get to that. That's coming up, but not yet, producer Lauren. I see you're already adjusting the ticker. Before we do the career update, because I know if I do the career update now for Elisa, that's all we're going to talk about. We're going to run out of time and we don't get to the story. But I do want to talk about this story with you because I need your sociologist touch. I need your PhD in pop culture touch on this.
Take a swig.
A Break the Business guest, a friend of the show, Rob Abelo, does the is great music blogger, and I frequently steal his content for this podcast. Put out an article recently called 10 Predictions for Music's Future, in which he writes out makes puts his futurist hat on, makes some predictions of what the industry is going to look like even just 5 years from now. And a couple of these I was like, ooh, maybe, but I'd like to get Elisa's perspective on this because here's one that might even take up the whole discussion, but I want to see what you think. So I'm going to quote this directly from Rob Abelo's article. Prediction number 4, Taylor Swift is the last of music's global superstars, is one of his predictions. We never see an artist gain this level of multi-generational awareness again. Artists will sell out arenas, sell tons of albums, get billions of streams, and have tons of fans, perhaps more than Taylor. But most people will not know who they are, right? Mm-hmm. And a term that I've frequently heard folks in your field talk about, Elisa, recently is how the rise in social media and algorithmically driven content could portend the end of monocultures, where we're all watching the same thing, where we're all worshiping the same celebrities. And so if we think that might be happening here, do you think there's any credence to what Rob Abelo is predicting here, that Taylor Swift is the last household name that all households know who they are?
It would be interesting. I might say she might be the last American white woman, potentially to have that sway. I fully predict, I kind of see that maybe like, I would maybe say Bad Bunny, depending on where his career goes, might maybe factor in there potentially. But in terms of this idea that like everything is getting so divided, it is absolutely true. I think that there are micro celebrities in terms of like content creators, but that also extends to the music industry as well. Everything has become so broken off, and especially things like TikTok algorithms are so tailored to you that like you and I, we don't have the same feeds. We don't have the same music taste anymore. Whereas, when we were back in middle school together, we would have probably all listened to the same stuff because we were listening to the same mega mix on Power 96. Shouts to them. But
I think you and I actually do have very similar feeds because earlier last week you sent me we both have the same very weird feeds. You sent me a video on TikTok of this young woman who stitched together like 12 videos of her singing all of the parts of One Day More from Les Miserables on the automaton. Iconic. And you sent that to me as if I did not already have that on my algorithm. No, your teammate.
Well, one, I wanted to wait until all of the parts were done because otherwise it would have been 15 TikToks in a row. But also our Venn diagrams connect in musical theater and parody absurdity.
Yep.
That is where we both coincide. But who knows, like say for example, right, what you were seeing now is more sort of like blips of celebrity where the 15 minutes of fame runway is considerably shorter. And it's a lot harder for people to kind of break out of a viral TikTok hit and be able to court the mainstream. It's going to just, I have no idea where stuff is going to go. And I'm really excited to talk to Taylor about this because especially with the kind of collapse of X/Twitter, it is very hard for all of us to find one congregative space. We don't have the kinds of like appointment television that we used to, where we'd all like be live tweeting the same episode of Game of Thrones like we used to. It's hard for us to find that kind of community, and it's going to be a lot more isolated, a lot more within friend groups, a lot more contracted. And yeah, people will sell out arenas, but the concert that I'm going to go see that's sold out might not be yours anymore. And I'm excited and scared.
And it's interesting that you bring up with the demise of X also means the demise of one place where we get all of our content, where we are all looking at the same bulletin board for what's important. And that can lead to kind of a diffusion of cultures and all of us experiencing things differently. Rob Abelo speaks to that in his article as well by talking about what he calls the great artist unbundling. One of his predictions is over the next few years, we're going to see a major shift in the artist fan experience, quote, away from mega platforms that bundle all the artists together as content, be they DSPs like Spotify or platforms like X/Twitter, to artist-centric platforms that bundle each artist's music, art, engagement, membership, and commerce. Most passive consumption will still happen on the mega platforms, but the mega platforms and the majors are going to miss out on the super fan opportunity to basically find one place where you're going to find all of one artist's content, which to me sounds exciting because it can create deeper fan relationships, but it also sounds pretty cyclical because does that mean we're just all going back to blogs?
Literally, you sent this to the group chat. I will say we have had this discussion in the group chat, and my comment was everybody better. It's going to be a land grab again for personal domain names at some point, because what is going to happen is you have all of your stuff everywhere. Now it's thinking about what your art is and then bringing all of those distribution platforms under your one domain. And then you just tell somebody, elisamelendez.com, it's all there. They might even just directly sell their music online because who knows what's going to happen to Bandcamp in a second. Like things are falling apart at the seams, and the only solution I think is for everybody to just take control of your own stuff, of your own distribution. I don't know, to break the business maybe, I don't know.
To me, I think some version of that is inevitable. And the reason why is because, and I want to talk to Taylor Lorenz about that because I think she implied a lot of what I'm about to say in her book, which is what we've seen time and time again with Twitter, with Facebook, with YouTube, is that the value in those platforms, what made those platforms billion-dollar platforms, multi-billion-dollar platforms, was not the technology. It wasn't the code. It wasn't the platform. It was the creative professionals. All of those platforms, even Vine, got to where they were when the really talented people went on that platform and made it the place to go. And so you could make an argument that 95% of the value of YouTube, of X, of Twitter, is from the creative people who don't own any of the platform, who own no equity in any of these, massive tech conglomerates. And so it makes sense for them, if the marketplace allows them to take their business to their own piece of real estate, their own website, bring their super fans with them, still have the passive experience on Spotify or X, Twitter, what have you. But the real fan engagement, the real community is going to happen at somebody's .com.
Or, talking to Taylor about this, somebody's Discord.
Oh, hello. Okay.
because that's a whole other thing. I just for one, I'm looking forward to adding you to my web ring sometime soon. We're getting back to that.
It's all cyclical, man.
It's all cyclical because what's going to happen is somebody at some point is going to be like, Hulu, Netflix, Max, Paramount Plus, can somebody just put all of these channels under one service provider and maybe give me some sort of television guide as to what's on?
And just like one fee to pay.
Yeah, and just one subscription, and I get all of the channels I want, and maybe some I don't.
This is going to be so Silicon Valley invents the bus.
Absolutely.
we're going, it's so frustrating in a way. One other thing that I thought was interesting, just quickly mention it before we get to your career update, because that's what everybody wants. Let's be real. Rob Abelo also talks about the marvelization of music, as he calls it. Quote,
Oof.
Another prediction is that major catalog owners will churn out music's version of sequels using AI in their deep catalogs to exploit timeless material for continued profit, generate new songs, create derivatives, bring dead artists back to, quote, life, anything to extend blue chip material and IP. Catalog and its reincarnations take increasing priority over new music. I think we're already starting to see this to some extent. Like, look at TikTok, right? Some of the most popular versions of songs on TikTok is not the original track.
Mm-hmm.
It's a slightly sped up version of the track, maybe a double speed version of the track, maybe a slowed down version of the track, right? I mean, how many times does this happen to you where you hear a song on TikTok and you fall in love with it and then you hear it on the radio and you're like, why is this so slow?
This literally happened with Ghost's Mary on a Cross.
Yes!
Which I absolutely adore. I love Ghost. You know me, I love a little pomp and circumstance with my metal. But the thing that went viral was the slowed version, to the point where when I finally went on Apple Music to like grab it, smart for them, they had both versions available in the EP, the regular version and the slowed version all bundled together. And it's bananas.
Yeah.
How that
Sometimes
works.
a lot of these sped up versions, and I can't remember what article I read this in. It might have been in something Taylor Lorenz, or it might have been something I read in Billboard, where it started out where a lot of these sped up versions of songs were being made by fans, right? Just people illegally ripping the songs, speeding them up, re-uploading them to TikTok. But, and this is to Rob Abelo's point, more recently, you're starting to see labels get in on the act where they are intentionally releasing a sped up version of the song and putting that on TikTok because it's more conducive to syncing with a short form video. And then, of course, you fall in love with that version, so they're going to put it on Spotify so you can check it out there. And this gets into the marvelization of music. Like, you fall in love with a song, let's give it to you in multiple formats, and then you'll reconsume those, because that's a lot easier than trying to break a new artist and a new song.
Yes, and it's going to be like what it's going to do now is like, this is going to affect, you know, in the same way that it affected song length. It's going to affect things like the way that you produce music. It used to be, okay, does it sound good in the car? All right, ship it. Then it was, all right, does it sound good, you know, on my PC speakers? Then it was, does it sound good just coming out of my phone? Now it's, does it sound good several BPM above or below what my original artistic intention was?
If we speed this up or slow this down, does this sound good while you're scrolling a meme slideshow on TikTok?
Is this sexy when someone's chopping down wood to it?
We really do have similar algorithms. All right. One more quick topic that is absolutely worth discussing before we bring in Taylor Lorenz is Elisa Rockdock's career update. When you are not a PhD in pop culture, you are kind of kicking ass as a voiceover artist, as an actress, as a audiobook narrator, and the listening and viewing public here at Break the Business love hearing about the great stuff you're up to. And you said yourself, you like doing these career updates whenever you come on the show, because they sort of force you to like come up with, you know, to do something cool with your career so that you have something to share with us.
I hope I get booked for something.
Do you have something cool to share with us?
I got booked this morning.
Woo! Huzzah!
Yay! And it is for my first on-camera commercial since that one Dunkin' Donuts ad I did like a bajillion years ago. So that's very exciting. It is for a nationally recognized brand, probably under NDA for the rest of it. But as soon as it is available for me to say that I did it, I'm going to be texting everybody.
You can tell
as soon
us.
as clips are available.
It's a safe space, just between you, me, and the 30 million SiriusXM subscribers. Just, you know, tell us what it rhymes with. That's not revealing anything.
Almost.
I almost
Event
did get
Horizon. It's for the movie Event Horizon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I believe we also have, because it's been a while since we've done this career update with you, I think we have a clip. We have some footage from another thing that you booked. Let's do this like the Tonight Show. Do you want to introduce this clip?
Yes, of course, Ryan. I would love to. So last year, I was able to take part in my first ever kind of major commercial under my recent agent, shouts to Mary Collins' agency. Love you, gals. And this was a VO commercial that I did. It was a very fun session. It was my first sort of big commercial session, and and I am happy to report that the food is actually tasty. So not a single lie was said.
So who is this for? Because I don't have the ad in front of me.
Maggiano's. It is a restaurant. It is an Italian restaurant. It is a chain. We have them here in Dallas. I don't know if whoever might have a Maggiano's near you. Highly recommend. The bread is free and delicious.
Okay. Well, all right. Now we need to hear this commercial. So this is just you doing voiceover. So for the listeners out there, you're not like missing any visual footage from Elisa Rock Doc. She's just talking about the delicious food at Maggiano's. Lauren, you have this clip for us?
At Maggiano's, it tastes good to go big in Little Italy. Because when it comes to your favorite Italian dishes, there's no such thing as too much mmm. From authentic classics like Mom's lasagna to specialty pastas like our famous rigatoni D, we put the more in amore. Some call it generous portions. We just call it our love language. Pull up a seat or enjoy family night in and experience the Maggiano's mmm.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank
First
you.
of all, I'd be in trouble if there were a Maggiano's in my area. Those
Legit,
portions do look quite generous,
They
and
are
everything
very
there
generous
looks
portions.
incredible. And your VO work just really, really sells the merchandise here.
Oh, well, thank you.
Just
that
marvelous.
last was the thing that probably took most of the session to record, because it's like sometimes I feel very, very lucky, because this for some reason is the kind of gig that I walk in, I do a thing for like 15 minutes to half an hour, I walk out, a check clears eventually, and I'm like, how'd that happen? I just spoke into a microphone and smiled a bit while I said it. This one was definitely a little bit more work, because it while it doesn't feel like work, it is a lot of work to interpret about 3 to 5 ad folks plus the client on the Zoom call as you're recording the thing. No pressure. Like having to impress Maggiano.
So you weren't just recording this like completely by yourself. There are people watching you.
Yeah.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah. So there was a little harrowing, and we just needed to hear different mms. And thank goodness I am a singer, because I was able to deliver every single pitch of mms I had available. And I'm like, pick your favorite one.
I was about to say, did they ask you like, can you just do like 12 mms and we'll just go back and put
it was a little bit like, can we have one a little less lascivious, or is it a delicious and different kinds of It's a very fuzzy line between
Mm-hmm. The they went with, I mean, that's little dangerous. This is a family restaurant, Elisa Rock Doc.
The bread is really good.
I mean, yeah, that chocolate cake might have been worth that that you gave us. Congratulations. That's a great spot. I'm excited for your next opportunity, and all of the viewers and listeners just love seeing these cool things you're putting together, whether it's the audiobook, whether it's these commercials. Just so great to see. You making the dream happen. We're all really proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much. This is the best gig in the world. And I feel lucky every single day that I get to play with a microphone or in front of a camera.
Let's take a break. We got Taylor Lorenz joining us right afterwards. Don't go anywhere. We're back in 2 minutes here on Break the Business.
Ryan Kairalla here. I hope you're enjoying the show, and I hope that you're getting a lot out of it. I do what I do because I care about creators like you. A lot. I've dedicated my career to helping creative professionals, entrepreneurs, and organizations move forward. I do it by hosting this program, and I'm also proud to do it in my legal practice. If you're a creative professional looking for solutions-oriented legal services to help you further your goals, I'd love to help. My firm RKPA does contracts, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Visit rkpalaw.com to learn more. That's rkpalaw.com. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show.
Elisa, I'm looking at the list of the things that each family member of mine is to bring for the Thanksgiving festivities tomorrow. And I noticed my family has been tasked with ice. So if you want to get some, lucky, but also if you want some indication of the amount of faith that the host has in the culinary abilities of my household, just know we were asked to bring ice.
Okay.
Welcome back to Break the Business, everybody. Ryan Kairalla here with Elisa Rockdock. Wishing all of you a happy Thanksgiving. How are you, Elisa?
I'm great. And already hungry for tomorrow.
What is Thanksgiving going to be for you? You got some stuff cooked? Are you ordering in? I hope you're ordering in. That sounds a lot easier.
My brother and his sister-in-law are hosting, and I have been tasked with making all of the mac and cheese, but we're doing a stovetop version with a toppings bar. So
like a make your own Sunday bar, but for macaroni and cheese,
or some like a butter toasted herbed Ritz crumbs on that mac and cheese, whatever you want.
I love it. All right, let us bring out our guest this week. I have only been looking forward to talking to this person my entire broadcasting life. She is the acclaimed columnist for the Washington Post and the author of the new book, Extremely Online: The Untold Story of Fame, Influence, and Power on the Internet, which chronicles the societal transformations brought about by the rise of social platforms and modern internet culture. It's available wherever books are sold, and you can find out more by visiting extremelyonlinebook.com. We are happy to welcome Taylor Lorenz on to Break the Business. Hi, Taylor.
Hi, how's it going?
It is a pleasure to be speaking with you. I got to say from the outset, Taylor, Elisa, for a little bit of background on her, she literally has a PhD in pop culture. So like this was like research for her reading through your book. As for me, it was, reading it as an entertainment lawyer, I was blown away by a lot of the analysis you gave. But my first impression when reading this, and I think Elisa used this adjective, which was apt, is how comprehensive it was. I mean, you went into this with a reporter's meticulousness. You interviewed what had to have been, probably over 100 people from what it looks like here. And, really went into your primary sources, really dug in deep and came up with almost I'd say an unabridged analysis of the last 25 years of social media. Can you talk a little bit about the process of how you put this book together and the research that was required?
Yeah. Well, I got my book deal right before the pandemic, so it kind of threw me for a loop in terms of the reporting process. I was planning to do a lot more in person. I ended up interviewing actually around 600 people total.
It was way too low.
I know. I can barely believe it. If I didn't have them all in an Excel sheet, I would not realize that. But yeah, it took me a long time because I wanted to make, as he said, this like sort of comprehensive history about the rise of social media, kind of zoomed out and talk about the interplay between these platforms. The original draft of the book was twice as long too. So I did talk to a lot of people that I ultimately didn't use. But yeah, it took me about 1.5 years to write it and then a year to get it published because books take a while to print.
I'd love to know the stuff that made the cutting room floor. I can just imagine Taylor Lorenz wrote a whole chapter about collegetrader.com and her editors are like, come on, something's got to get jettisoned here. And you're like, no, College Trader is so important.
Write my professor now.
I'm saving for book 2.
Yes.
It was a lot, there was a lot of stories, like people's stories that kind of got cut, like a lot of more personal stuff. And then other sort of ancillary stuff that didn't totally fit with social media, things like Reddit that are kind of like adjacent. And I mentioned Reddit, but I initially had like a whole chapter on that. So yeah, it was a lot, but hopefully it was an easy read.
The Redditors are a easygoing bunch. I'm sure they're not going to be upset that you took out most of their discussion. I am, as I told Elisa in the first segment, Taylor, I am ill-equipped to do this interview on my own because you come at this analysis with a PhD's level of meticulous in detail. And so I had to bring in a PhD to like weigh in on this. Like, I'm going to step back here for a sec. Elisa, what do you got for Taylor Lorenz?
Oh, well, first off, just sort of gushing and maybe an admission that reading the book felt like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme just the entire time. Whenever I would read something and I'd be like, Pioneer Woman, yes! Cobra Snake, and it was like a almost retrospective in a couple of places of my own online history, and I was like, oh, should I be embarrassed that I remember this or that I was there?
No, I love that though. I want people to read it and be like, oh my God, I remember that. Or like, I had no idea that was happening, so.
Yeah. And even just sort of like a lot of the moments before the big moments is what I loved seeing. Like the idea of, and so many decisions that we take for granted now, like, oh, this is just how a brand deal works now. The idea that the Carl's Jr. YouTube story, one of these sort of first major brand deals that occurred not just with banner ads, but also with the work of YouTube influencers doing a coordinated effort. The fact that was just we got some extra budget. What do you think we should do with it? Like just some of these throwaway questions and these sort of like sliding doors moments of like, what if we hadn't had that $90,000 randomly to have $90,000 left over in a budget? First off, what? That was like the first thing that I thought. But the idea of like these little decisions made in rooms of like, wouldn't it be weird if that now turn into the things that we take so for granted nowadays in digital media? It's awesome.
Yeah, so many little moments that you look back and you're like, wait, that was actually really pivotal, or like that was kind of this like watershed moment that you just don't realize when things are happening at the time.
And to what Elisa noted there about us taking some of these things for granted, right? There's so many things that we do now that are just so commonly accepted in marketing. or in promoting creative professionals that back then, like, it's, you know, it would have been like telling a brand, we want you to light your building on fire. I mean, you write about how, like, you know, some brands were shocked at the notion of, you want us to make a Twitter account for our company? You want, you know, this company to tweet like the same Twitter that like these crazy people are writing crazy things on Twitter? That's insane. We would never do that. And now they all do that. Like now you're, you know, Wendy's is talking to you like they're Wendy's. I mean, but that used to be crazy. Like what is, like, of all the things, of all those different phenomena in your book, what's the one where you point to where you're like, what this thing that we do so commonly now used to be unheard of a decade or two ago?
Okay. Well, one thing that I only mention in passing in the book, but it was originally going to be much longer, and I took it out and pulled it into a separate piece because it didn't make the final version of everything, but is selfies. 10 years ago, actually, just a couple months ago, was when selfie was declared word of the year. And I don't know if you guys remember, but it was like the media cycle. If you go back and read what was written about when people started to take selfies, it is insane. Like, you would have thought this was like the death of society. And it's like, and every time like Obama took a selfie, that was a scandal for weeks. And then like anytime a celebrity took a selfie or posted a selfie, there was like an entire Huffington Post article about it. Like, and it was this thing where it was like, everyone's turning into narcissists and it's crazy. And it was just, I thought it was so interesting. One, because the user behavior was pioneered by teen girls, actually, and which a lot of things are on the internet. And also just the like freak out and the like takes, like there's this CNN segment on the cell. It's so funny. They're freaking out. And it's like, guys, relax. It's just a front facing camera.
I wanted to point out something that you mentioned too, which is like the biggest, you know, thing that I love about your book as somebody who researched like gender in video games, is the idea that we're losing a lot of institutional knowledge. And it's a lot of the institutional knowledge that that also points out that a lot of these sort of formative voices weren't Silicon Valley CEOs. It was mommy bloggers. It was teen girls, is Tumblr culture. It's like so much of the way that fans interact and, you know, that we interact with media nowadays, all of that was pioneered by young girls and women and other marginalized folks. And you shining a light on that is very, very important, because when the history of the internet is written, you know, much like a lot of times the history of video games is still being written, a lot of voices are left out that look like us. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, as a tech reporter, it's kind of my pet peeve, because I think that there's so much focus. I mean, the two books that came out right when mine were like, of course, the big Michael Lewis, Sam Bankman-Fried book, and Walter Isaacson's Elon Musk book, which I read pretty much most of both of those. But there's just so much obsession with tech founders, and specifically men, and this myth of like the great man theory of technological progress. And it's such bullshit. And as somebody that covers like internet culture and you know, especially content creator culture, it was very much not that. And actually those Silicon Valley founders were like very hostile to these creators in the creator industry for years. So yeah, it was fun to kind of try to set the record straight. I do that a lot with my reporting, but now I'm like, okay, it's in a book.
Well, let's stay with that for a second, because I would say of the many themes of your book that I found compelling, I think that one was the one that spoke to me the most, and spoke to kind of what this podcast is all about the most, which is empowering indie creators and, you know, getting them what they're worth. And I have highlighted and chiseled and circled this one passage that I just want to quickly read, because I think it blows me away. And this speaks to what you just said, Taylor. This is from the start of chapter 6. While the mythology around Silicon Valley featured young men who could see the future better than everyone else, what the rise of social media thus far had proven is that nearly all of those young men had been wrong. They had each built a platform with the confidence that it would do one thing better than anyone else, only to be redirected and rescued by a community of creative users. What your book showed us time and time again is that all of these major social media platforms, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, every single one of them without exception, Vine, got to where they were not because the technology was great. In fact, a lot of times in the early years, the technology was super buggy. It was the creative professionals. All of these platforms became multi-billion-dollar platforms when the creators descended upon them and created content that we all wanted to go onto the platform and watch. And what's frustrating to me when I read that as an entertainment lawyer who represents these creators is they're the ones that create all the value in these platforms. They're the ones that turn these platforms from million-dollar platforms into billion-dollar platforms, and none of them ever see any of the equity from it. It all goes to the tech people who created the buggy technology. And when these platforms blow up, not only do the creators not get to participate in any of that profit, in any of that growth, but they're often left holding the bag when these platforms inevitably collapse like Vine did, and all of their followers, all of their fans disappear, and they have nothing. And I mean, can I get your perspective on this? And any, I don't know if you've ever entertained any thoughts about what the solution is. Like, do we create some kind of structure where these creators can get equity in the platform, like a stock option, the way that employees in a startup do? I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, certain startup social media companies will offer early creators, stock in the company. I don't know that that's totally the best option just because so many creators are in flux. Like, you're not always a creator necessarily for the whole lifespan of a platform. I mean, if you ask the crypto people, they think that like blockchain will solve this, whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's probably more.
Tokens and-
Yeah, I don't know about any of that, but I think it's probably more of like a federated model. Like Threads has said that they're going to kind of like have this interoperability, but basically trying to make it so that you're not so locked into specific platforms. Like, I think a lot more journalists are actually paying attention to this issue because of the downfall of Twitter. And that's where like pretty much all journalists have like their clout. And so I think they're starting, I don't know, there's just been a lot more coverage. My colleague Willa Ramus has written some really smart stuff about it, but yeah, there's not, I mean, but that still doesn't give them a share of the profit. And I think that, the whole profit incentives, I would love to see less profit driven platforms, to be honest.
That would probably be a lot better for all of us, including the people who have to frequent these platforms. Let me talk about you for a second. The book is wonderful, and we can talk more about it. But I wanted to ask you about something that I've wanted to ask you for a long time, which is you have devoted your career to chronicling this culture, but you're not just chronicling it as a traditional journalist would, where you're kind of an outside observer. You're also, whether you intended to or not, a participant in this culture, an active participant in this culture, and oftentimes a victim of this culture. And so, can you speak to that? Like, what's it like being a journalist in something where you're very much in the tornado as it's spinning?
Yeah. A friend of mine is a pop music critic, and I think of him often because, he's such a fan of pop music and loves it, but is also like, just that world is so, I think it's very similar to my beat in the sense that there's these like intense fandoms and intense online experiences. I love it. I mean, I am a lover of the internet and technology, and I'm a content creator myself. And so I think I like the creativity that the internet gives, and the way that I can have a two-way dialogue with my readers and followers. Like, I think that it's such a shame that most journalists don't want to engage in that two-way sort of thing. It's more they want to like write their story and put it out there and then not like hear the feedback. And sometimes you're right, the feedback can be crazy, and I'm wrapped up in like drama and all the ways that the internet is weaponized. But I just think it makes my work better, because I think if you're going to have somebody write about this world, you want somebody living it. That was my whole goal when I started writing. I didn't have any background in journalism or anything. I was working at a call center and temp jobs, and I just thought that the mainstream media was writing really badly about the internet. And so that was like the era of the bloggers. I was like, I could set up a blog and do this.
I'm a little surprised by that. I mean, Taylor, I say this as respectfully as possible. You can't possibly love all of it. If I were to make my list of people who have been, adversely affected by people on the internet publicly and who have not deserved it, you're very high on that list. I mean, you have often faced things that, if they were to happen to me, I would have hid under a rock, much less, wanted to write a book about it. And so to hear you say like, you speak as if like you didn't go through like a lot of the things that you went through. Like, does it just kind of roll off your back?
Yeah, I know. I think covering YouTubers for so long, it's like being like a frog in boiling water. Where like,
Yeah.
I mean, I was saying this when like Tucker Carlson kept doing all these segments on me in 2020, 2021 before he got kicked off the air. And you know, all of his fans were doxing me and trying to swat me and everything that had happened to me so many years prior from Jake Paul fans. And, you know, I cover like video game people. Like, I mean, I'm friends with people that were involved that were targeted in Gamergate. And like, I've been through so many cycles of it that at this point I'm like, okay, here we go again. Swap my parents again. Like, what are you guys going to do? By the way, my family doesn't give a shit. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm still going to do my job. I mean, there are scary aspects of it that sometimes really affect my life, especially the stalking is really affected my life. But I'm a delusional optimist generally about life. So I don't know.
It's and as somebody who like took a glancing glow from Gamergate, because I started my career in video games, you know, as an opinion writer, and then I wrote one strong opinion about women in video games, maybe too many, in around 2014. And so and really like I sympathize, because it's like it's really like literally and figuratively for the love of the game. And also because like I'm not gonna let you be the one. Like there has to be some version of that. It's like, of all people, it's not going to be you that makes me quit. And I'm sure there's a whole comment section that you can say that about. But it really is the love of the game that keeps us in it. But also because without your voice, you know, it's who else is going to be left to write about these things and actually tell these important stories.
Well, also, I'm grateful that I have the platform that I do, that I built up myself over years, because I think it gives me a level of power. You know, I've seen the way, especially these media institutions treat women and people of color and people that are targeted in these campaigns. And I think I'm luckily like high profile enough that like I'm insulated from some of the worst of it, like in the sense that like they can't just like be like, oh, this girl is getting targeted a lot, like we're just going to fire her to not deal with it anymore. Like, which I've seen happen to other women and other people of color and other marginalized groups. And so I feel pretty lucky. And I'm kind of, like I said, I'm in a good position. I've talked about this before too, like with my family, like, because my family's been targeted a bunch. And it's like, my family, if they call the police to my parents' house again, like my parents are pretty chill. They live in a nice suburban neighborhood. Like it's not as scary as a, you know, former colleague of mine whose parents were immigrants, undocumented. And, you know, like, so I'm kind of like, it could be worse. And also, yeah, I think it just gives me a way better understanding and empathy for the people that I cover, because a lot of the people I cover have been through hell on the internet. And the reason I get the stories I do is because they know that I'm not going to fuck it up, because I've been on the other end. So,
yeah. And let me ask you about the 20 something, 30 something years you've chronicled in this book, and where we started and where we are now, and the fact that you have been chronicling it most of this time, being a participant in it, being impacted by it, all of the good, all of the bad. Can you just assess all of it and just, you know, let me ask you, like,
help
overall, is all of this a good thing overall or a bad thing? Would we be better off if we just didn't have any of the last 25 years of social media?
Okay, I say no. I say we're better, but I don't think that we're better because like Mark Zuckerberg is so great or something. I think that like I do think that, and I talk about this sort of at the end of my book, but I do think the connection is so important. It's this fundamental human need, and the democratization of information, the rise of sort of independent journalism, I think is really important. The problem is that this whole sort of ecosystem has been so warped by profit and really nefarious incentive structures that we're in like a bad place. Like we're in this weird flux period. But I'm hoping that we can get out better, but I would so much rather be alive today than in the 90s and in that media environment, because it's crazy. No one had a voice. Like you didn't have a voice unless you went through a gatekeeper, truly. And the world today sucks in so many ways, and so many people still don't have voices in the way that they could, but I mean, at least you can go on TikTok or, there's some sense of justice. I was just watching this horrible video of this man harassing this street vendor on the Upper East Side saying the most racist stuff ever. And I was just like, thank God for cell phones and having, that recording. And again, I think we live in a surveillance state with everyone recording each other. I'm not saying it's all good, but there's just a lot more accountability because of the internet. And I'm grateful for that. Also, way more careers in media for people like me and other people that would have never gotten into journalism otherwise.
Now, even though your book isn't a how-to guide for creative professionals, it is, it's very much an independent report, a, chronicling of, the last couple decades in media. I think there are at least some lessons that are implied for creators in the book, perhaps lessons that you can learn as a creator if you read the book, which I recommend all creators do. Can you talk a little bit about, like, if a independent creator came up to you and asked you, like, what are some of the lessons that we should learn from the last 25 years of social media and the internet about how to improve my career over the next 5 to 10 years? What might you tell them?
Ooh, okay. The first thing I would say is hedge your bets because everything is way more volatile than you think. And that's a big lesson that I learned is like, don't ever put all your chips on one table, I guess it is, like with one platform, and to be kind of creative. And so just hedge your bets and don't bet on one platform. I mean, so many different things, just like monetize in a smart way, also diversify your revenue streams as much as possible. And try to do things. I mean, I think like the stories of people, I was interested in like a lot of the creators that set early trends. Like I do think that there's value to being early on things. Right now we're in this period though, where everyone recognizes the value, almost like, especially young people, they really recognize the value of new social platforms. So you see this like rush every time there's a new app, like, is this the next ticket to fame? And that's not the best way to approach things. Like, I mean, I just say like, have fun. And if you're not having fun online, then don't do it anymore. It's not worth it.
Well, before we do the final question that we ask all the guests, I would like to give Elisa Rockdock another opportunity to come in with one more question so we can benefit from her expertise to get the most out of Taylor's expertise.
Gross. No. My sort of thing, Twitch added stories to its app. What are we doing here? Just generally, like, where are we going? Because I'm somebody who is also like dabbled in Twitch, loves TikTok, but everything's trying to become everything to everyone. What are we doing?
The stories thing is so interesting because what it is people wanting more lightweight, ephemeral ways to engage in social media. And tech companies can sort of only understand that through stories. Like, it's like, oh, Snapchat did this one thing in 2016 and now we're all going to do it. And I think it's a lack of creativity and just the product teams always copying each other at every platform. But yeah, I agree. Enough. We no more stories.
Our guest has been Washington Post columnist and author Taylor Lorenz. Her new book, Extremely Online, The Untold Story of Fame, Influence, and Power on the Internet, is available wherever books are sold. Find out more by visiting extremelyonlinebook.com. Taylor, before we let you go, one last question. And I understand this is kind of sort of a repeat of the question I previously asked, but it is what it is because we got to ask the final question to every guest. So I think hopefully you got one more tidbit for us.
As one of my favorite meme accounts on Instagram.
Oh my God.
So, yes, exactly. One last question. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Oh my God. No, it's a good question. I mean, in terms of creators, I think collaboration is the most important thing. And also, a lot of times you see people doing things that are similar to you. And I see this all the time where people get very territorial and very competitive. I think that's the worst thing to do because when I started writing about the internet, I found a bunch of other people that were also writing about the internet. And we all help each other so much. I could have not done my job without the girls that I found that do it with me. And so we're at competing publications, but a rising tide lifts all ships. And it's really true. And actually realized that writing my book too. It's like collaboration is so important. So find your people and collaborate and don't worry about, don't get all competitive too much with each
We
other.
are certainly glad we found you as a person, Taylor. This has been a blast of an interview. I know how busy your schedule is, particularly now with the book coming out, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. Please don't be a stranger. We'd love to have you on again real soon. Like anytime you want to come by, please make yourself available. I would love to keep this excellent conversation going, and this has been a real treat.
Thank you guys so much. I'm a fan and I'm honored to be here. So hit me up anytime. And thanks again and happy Thanksgiving.
Did we all get that? I'm a fan. Let's get that printed on as many dust jackets as we possibly can. Again, you can find out more about our guest's work by visiting extremelyonlinebook.com. Our thanks to Taylor Lorenz and Lisa Rockdock, producer Lauren, and all of you viewers and listeners for checking out Break the Business. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.